My name is Catherine Bush. I'm named after my mother, and she was named after my aunt. So, I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I grew up there, and we lived in a little town called Bellevue. My parents owned a duplex, and we lived in the first floor and the third floor. Second floor was rented out. I'm the oldest of five, and my dad, his role was he was chief engineer of a large department store, and my mother was a housewife. I think my mother had a little resentment that she was pregnant before she got married and all of that. The first years were, I don't know, a little bumpy, and my dad went off to the service, so it was just she and I, and she was not as mature as she was later in life. But it was a good bonding time. However, when he came home, then that went away. Anyway, my next brother came along, and he was maybe 5 years younger than my sister, and then my brother, and then my baby sister. And I did spend a lot of time taking care of the kids, and there were 84 in my graduating class. I didn't do very well in school. I mean, I was average. We didn't have books at my house. We had comic books, and I went to the movies. As a result of that, over time, I found that passion of mine. But in the meantime, I had to go through a lot of different changes and figure out, okay, I didn't like this. This is okay, but I didn't really like it because. So, one of the best choices that I've ever made was to enter the convent. I was a Roman Catholic nun for 25 years. And during that time, our community, as Sisters of St. Joseph, we were mostly teaching and nursing community. I became a nun when I was 21. I never thought I would be able to go to college. A group of us took the college entrance exam. I don't know how I passed it, but I did. I was a student at Harlow University. I got through college, lived with sisters. So after I had taught for 4 years, I went to the woman who was head of the community, and I said, I really don't love it, and others do, and so I'd like to do something else. And she said, how about nursing? So I said, okay, let's give it a shot. When I was in nurses training, the women who were teaching me, the clinicians, were excellent. I mean, they were wonderful nurses, but they were terrible teachers, and I was a teacher. And I used films a lot when I was teaching, as a matter of fact. I went to the teachers and said, hey, how about if I get some movies that are like on the skeletal system, circulatory system, and so on. Well, they were very happy about that because they knew that education wasn't their thing. It was more mine. So they got the projector over, I threaded it up and showed the film, and then I took the projector back to the department, and the department was called the Medical Photography Department. And as soon as I went there and saw all the pictures, I said, this is where I need to be. They happened to need help, and so because I was part of the hospital team, I was able to go. We did patient photography. I assisted. I didn't photograph anyone. After that, I did a year's residency in medical photography, and then was hired as a medical photographer at Mercy Hospital in Pittsburgh. I was there for 3 or 4 years. I decided that I wanted to say more with my photographs. As interesting as it was to film in the operating room or with patients, we did ORs, we did autopsies. We had a big burn unit. That was hard because you would have to ask people to turn on their burns to get what I needed, because those photographs were used to teach residents at the hospital. And I remember one time there was a little girl she was probably 4, her little brother, and I went up to the children's floor, and I was so touched by this little being. I mean, she was burned very badly, and to establish a little rapport with her, you know, rather than, okay, honey, just do this or do that, I would say, hey, can I take your picture? And you know, big smile, and just had a nice little conversation with the little one. And then I was going to photograph her brother, and it was time to check out. So I said, okay, I'll be back tomorrow, and I'll take your picture again. So I went back the next day, and I did some pictures of her again, and so on. That following week, part of the autopsy experience was if there was a heart removed and it was a specimen, or brains. These were people who obviously had already died, and their body parts, if they had a tumor in the brain or something like that, doctors wanted photographs of that. So I took my turn doing that, and at one point I noticed it was a small brain, and I looked to see the name on it, and it was the little girl that she had died, and I kind of lost it, broke down. But after about 3 or 4 years, I decided I wanted to do more with my photographs. So I sent a resume and a portfolio to LA, to the film company, and I used their films. I got a job, and at that point I had to find another convent to live in, and so I asked some people, and they suggested to live at the convent in Venice. After I worked at the film company, I went to UCLA Film School, and I have a master's degree in film production. So when I eventually left, I was a sister for 25 years. I've been in California for almost 50 years. There's a lot between graduating from high school and becoming a filmmaker. I'm happy with my life. I made some good choices, I made some bad choices, but the good ones outnumber the bad ones.